Good morning, and welcome to Mount Vernon Unitarian Church. My name is Becky Brandt, a Unitarian Universalist, and I'm very glad to be with you today in covenant and beloved community with this congregation. Whether this is your first time or if you've been with us many, many times, I want you to know that you are welcome. Our church is offering Sunday services both in person and virtually, so whether you're here in the chapel or joining us from home, you are most welcome. Mount Vernon Unitarian Church is a community dedicated to welcoming the stranger, working for justice wherever the heavy weight of oppression has dug into the fabric of life. To that effort, we name and honor the traditional indigenous inhabitants of the land, the Piscataway, the Powhatan, and the Talks. And we recall that enslaved people worked the land where we gather this morning. As we gather, we recommit ourselves to the mission of this church, to support one another in our spiritual journeys, to work for justice, to care for the earth, and to build the common good. It is great to be together. This morning, I have the honor and pleasure to introduce our guest minister, the Reverend Ebony Peace. Ebony is a lay community minister whose ministries focus on workplace justice, liberal sexuality education, and leadership development. She is an adult, Our Whole Lives, or OWL, sexuality education facilitator. As a part of her ministries, she serves as a co-facilitator for the District of Columbia Center for the LGBT Communities Job Club. She serves as the special advisor to the board of directors at the Unitarian Universalist Society for Community Ministries and is the 2022 winner of the Charles Billings Prize for Excellence in Preaching, awarded by the Meadville Lombard Theology School. Ebony is a lifelong Unitarian Universalist from Maryland. She holds a BA in sociology and a master's in strategic human resources and organization development, and a master's of arts in leadership studies from Meadville Lombard Theological School. She completed her seminary internship at All Souls Church in DC, where she focused on adult spiritual development, social justice, and worship arts. In her spare time, she enjoys writing poetry and stories. Her poems have been published in the 2021 Spirit Anthology and in BLUU Notes, an anthology of love, justice, and liberation by Skinner House Books. Welcome, Ebony. And now, let us turn our hearts and minds to worship. Our chalice lighting this morning is entitled, Let the Chalice Connect Us. As the chalice is lit, let us come together into the sacred space we have created. Let the cares of the day fall away and know that here is a place for quiet reflection, for a pause in our lives, for breathing into our true selves. Let what is said and felt here add richness to the dimensions of our lives and spiritual practices. We are strong together in community. We share the experience of being human. Let the warmth of the chalice lit during our time together connect us and carry us into the world. Please rise in body and spirit for hymn number 361, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. Remain standing as we join our voices together in the covenant of Mount Vernon Unitarian Church. Love is the teaching of this church. The quest of truth is its daily task, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve life in community, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony. This is our covenant with each and with all. This morning, instead of a For All Ages story, we have a very special ceremony that will be, I hope, shared with great joy and enthusiasm by all. We have a multi-generational child dedication this morning from a very important family in MVUC. Nicholas Pierre Zaray, who is the grandson of Reverend Linda Olson Peebles and the son of Katie and John, is going to be dedicated. Welcome.
Thank you, Becky. And I appreciate Becky's warm welcome. I appreciate the beautiful music. Are we not gifted today? Thank you so much, Stephen and Jean. And I am so happy to be here with Ann Richards, your Director of Lifespan Spiritual Growth, for this occasion. And also we have received the blessings of your new minister, Reverend Ian White Mayer, to be here today. Today we're going to have a ceremony that is at the heart and soul of what religious community is all about. This congregation will welcome a child into your midst and dedicate yourselves to the well-being of this child, even as we are going to dedicate this child to a life of love and purpose. So now I invite Nico and his parents, Katie and John, to come forward and stand right here and join Ann and me. It's okay, Nico, I promise nothing's going to hurt. Our faith, Unitarian Universalism, is an affirmation that we honor the lives of children in our own community and in the world. We believe that every night a child is born is a holy night, and every child is special, and every child's life changes the history of the world. It's our faith that we have a responsibility to care for children, all children, those in our families, those in our community, and those around the world. Part of caring for children is dedicating their families and ourselves to being in relationship with one another and working together to make a better world for all. In this ceremony, we affirm the dignity and the individuality of all children and their relationship to the community of humankind. It's important for us to dedicate ourselves anew to this in this ceremony because we are aware of the significance of our role in the lives of children here and everywhere. Some 40 years ago, my husband Dale and I came to a Christmas Eve service in this very sanctuary. It was brand new. And the Reverends Betty Jo Middleton, who is here today, and Ken Hurto dedicated our three children, Katie, Byron, and Elizabeth. This community helped them become loved and loving people. Today, our daughter Katie and her husband John have come with John's mother Mary, who's here from Florida, welcome Mary, to bring their son Nico to be dedicated. Ann?
All of us, parents, family, the congregation, we are all essential to supporting the continuing unfolding of this miraculous blessing. Nico Zure. We ask all of you in our congregation to rededicate yourselves and accept responsibility to offer this child and all children safety, affection, and encouragement. I ask everyone here today, do you pledge your understanding and support to all families? And we want you to say this very loudly. If you agree, say, yes, we do.
Yes, we do.
And the children who are here this morning, especially the cousins, I can see Ada and Daisy and Jane. Will you be a friend to Nico and help him grow up happy here? I want you to say yes. Wait a minute, I know you guys. You can't get away with that. Let's try it again. Yes. Much better. We offer Nico a book today as a sign of MVUC's commitment to continued learning and growing. It's called You're Here for a Reason by Nancy Tillman. There you go, Nico. That's for you.
So John and Katie, as Nico's parents, you have for many years now been learning the joys and the responsibilities of parenting. Today, I'm going to ask you some questions. Do you formally dedicate yourselves to continuing to love and nurture the growth of this precious gift in your lives? And do you dedicate yourselves to supporting Nico as he finds his own sense of meaning and value of life and love? Yes, we do. And will you offer him the example in your own lives of how to be loving and caring human beings? Will you hold him when he needs you and let him go as he is increasingly ready to journey into the world? And will you respect his freedom to find meaning and faith in his own way?
Yes, we will.
And I want you to answer this with a big yes. Will you remember to call on others as you have need, your family, this congregation, and your friends, to help you in the holy task of nurturing Nico?
Yes.
And now, Nico, I have something to say to you. Nico's my buddy. We go to the pool together. Yeah. Your parents and your family and this congregation have all promised to dedicate themselves to your growing up. How does that feel? They're on your side. They're on your team. Does that feel good? Oh, you're not going to talk to me today, okay. So now it's time that we dedicate you, Nicholas Pierre Zaray. Your parents have poured love and a lot of meaning into your name, Nicholas Pierre. Someone who is so energetic and loving and filled with great ideas, a friend to all you meet. Your name, Nicholas, reminds us of the time of the year you were born, the time of the winter solstice, when the light begins to return to the world, the time of remembering the Christian Saint Nicholas who helped care about other people. And your middle name is Pierre, the name of your grandfather, John's dad, Grandma Mary's husband. We feel Pierre's presence here today. You come from generations of people who have loved your parents, who have loved their parents, and who have lived their lives also to help other people. And so we're going to dedicate you now with the gift of a flower. This flower is a symbol of life's beauty and unfolding. I've removed the thorns because I'm hoping that your life is going to be filled with very few thorns. But I always hope that you will be surrounded by people who love you to help you if you do find some thorns in life. I'm going to dip the flower into water. Water is the symbol of the blessing of life. Nicholas Pierre Zaray, by this name you are known, your worth and individuality are recognized. Born December 21st, 2017 in Alexandria, Virginia, you're part of the Fellowship of Life. And now I touch you on your brow and your lips and your heart and your hands. And I dedicate your thoughts and your words and your feelings and your deeds to our heritage of service and love. We wish for you, Nicholas, and for all children, the fulfillment of a long life, strong and radiant with purpose, strong and radiant with hope, strong and radiant with joy. Nico, may the blessings of life be yours in abundance. Amen. Welcome him.
Amen.
You're so welcome.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright, blessed day, the dark, sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow so pretty in
the sky are also on the faces of people passing by. I see friends holding hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry. I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
So beautiful. And with that, let us sing our children out to their classes. We come now to the morning offering. At this time, MVUC asks each of us to show our spiritual and material generosity. Each week, we share the plate with a charitable organization that our members have chosen. In August, we are sharing the plate with Together We Bake. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Together We Bake, but also we have a pleasure of having a representative from Together We Bake here with us this morning. Hannah has joined us, and she has a table out in the Commons with cookies and a whole lot of information, so please be sure to stop by. Together We Bake is a comprehensive workforce training and personal development program for underserved and underrepresented women. They help women gain self-confidence, transferable workforce skills, and invaluable hands-on experience, which allows them to find employment and move towards self-sufficiency. I invite you to contribute whatever you're most comfortable with to Together We Bake and this church community. If you'd like to write a check for the offering, please make it to MVUC, and in the memo line indicate what it's for. You can also go to the website and give directly. We are very grateful for your donation. During the offering, you are also welcome to come forward in silence to light a candle of joy or sorrow. And now would the ushers please come forward for this morning's offering.
It's lovely. And now, let us gather our hearts and minds in a spirit of prayer, meditation, or attentive stillness, which will then be followed by a few spoken words. During this quiet time, may our hearts open to love and healing, and may our minds open to hope and possibility. Blessed radiance, compassionate and holy, thank you for teaching us by example how to coexist, for reminding us that we must always prepare now for what is to come. There will be good times and bad, life and death, endings and new beginnings, the circle of life. May this knowledge set us free and not present itself as something to fear. The sacred web and flow of the universe is meant to be ridden and embraced, not pushed through. May we be held in grace and unity. May we co-create our world with courage, truth, and joy. May it be so.
Please remain seated and join in the singing of hymn number 1029, Love Knocks and Waits for Us to Hear, in the Teal hymnal.
So good to be with you this morning. Next, we'll have a responsive reading. When I go like this, you can say, "Blessed are those who change with love." So we're going to practice that once. And you'll say, "Blessed are those who change with love." Okay, so. Blessed are those who change with love. Yes, awesome. Very good. May we bless the work inherent in the review of our values. May we hold sacred this aspect of our theology, which calls us to reconsider our past, listen to those in which we covenant with, and find shared meaning to serve as a beacon for our future. For the servant leaders overseeing this review and our transformation process, for the listeners who discern with love. Blessed are those who change with love. We engage together and in good faith. We collectively transform with love. May we embody change as a spiritual practice. May we embody love. We all need water to survive, as we all need love to thrive. We share the flame. We choose love as the enduring force that holds us together. With open hearts and curious minds, may we receive the realities and blessings of change. Blessed are those who change with love. beautiful. We have a long living tradition of expanding and opening our hearts. It's of no surprise that we, as Unitarian Universalists, are predisposed to change. Change is literally baked into the bylaws of the Unitarian Universalist Association. Did you know our principles and sources were not meant to be static? I knew we called ourselves the living tradition because we consider ourselves flexible, reasonable, open-minded, but I did not know that, and excuse me while I get a little technical here, that Article 15, Section C-15.1 requires a periodic review of Article 2. Article 2 is a section of our UUA bylaws that contain our principles, sources, and purposes. This periodic review is mandated to take place not less than every 15 years. Our principles were first created in 1960. A review happened back then in the mid-'80s, which added our 7th principle and 5 sources. This mid-'80s review was led mostly by women who advocated to replace sexist language with gender-neutral language. In 1995, Earth-centered traditions were added as a source. We haven't had any major changes since then, even though the study and review of our Article 2 continue to take place. This is important. Just because a review and proposed changes occur does not mean the proposal will pass. Case in point, 2006, a review began, and 2 years later, in 2008, draft revisions to our principles, sources, and purposes were proposed. A year later, at the 2009 General Assembly in Salt Lake, Utah, delegates voted down the proposed changes. The vote was very close with a 13-vote difference, 573 to 586. To be clear, right now in 2023, we are in the midst of such a review. Our forebears who crafted this rule of periodic review wanted to ensure our faith deliberately adapted to the future and that we remained without a permanent dogma. When these 15-year reviews start, it moves along in a 2-year process of deep discernment that includes input from individuals and eventual voting by delegates. These delegates vote twice, once for preliminary approval with a simple majority, and then a second vote that requires 2/3 vote over 2 consecutive General Assemblies. Our cosmic reality is that the universe is in motion, our earth is in motion, for our faith to be in motion, for Unitarian Universalism to embrace the natural rhythm of the cosmos in which we are a part, I think is a beautiful truth. Continuous change and reevaluation are a part of our theology. We are not called the living tradition for nothing. We are open to new information. We have a culture of learning, a theology of applying what we've learned into our sacred values. This matters in our case. Change is good. Some of us have been talking about, voting on, or doing our best to live into the spirit of the 8th principle. I see the current Article 2 review as an extension of our 8th principle work. This is about stretching ourselves to not just do justice work outside of our faith communities, but within them. This matters because the current proposed changes include the heart of the 8th principle, language. This is the inclusion many of us have been working hard towards. The proposed changes include a pledge to be inclusive, welcoming, and accountable for creating a beloved community. I invite those of you who may be uncomfortable with the proposed changes to consider not the technical reason for why these changes are being proposed, but what this sacred process of review can teach us. Every 15 years or so, this ritual of change reminds us, teaches us about the spiritual practice of change, of transformation. Let's use this as an opportunity to remind ourselves of our UU theology of change. Remind ourselves that we are meaning makers who don't just preach, but practice. This is where we practice being in relationship with one another and active listening. This is where we hold space for grief and difficult conversations. Our principles, sources, are emotionally charged because they are sacred. They give us direction and a shared understanding of what matters most. When something critical to the core of our faith changes, it inevitably changes us as well. I hope we can give ourselves grace. I hope that when the changes are said and done, that we celebrate the faithful process we engaged in. Not necessarily celebrating the changes per se, but celebrating our process. The right answer is not in the results of this review, whatever that may be. The right answer is in our process in which we covenant for our shared truth. So let's get started with what this new Article 2 proposal is about. This proposal expresses that we are inspired by multiple sources of wisdom and experience, that we covenant and agree to replace systems that create barriers with solidarity that creates belonging. Our multifaceted inspirations and pledge of inclusion seem to set the groundwork for the next section of the proposal that continues with values and covenant. It's clear that the spirit of our principles is here in this proposal, yet they're now called values and are reframed to center love. This section includes 7 values: love, justice, generosity, transformation, pluralism, equity, and interdependence. They read as follows. Love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. Inseparable from one another, these shared values are interdependence. We honor the interdependent web of all existence. We covenant to cherish earth and all beings by creating and nurturing relationships of care and respect. With humility and reverence, we acknowledge our place in the great web of life, and we work to repair harm and damaged relationships. Pluralism. We celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. We covenant to learn from one another in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect. Justice. We work to be diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all thrive. We covenant to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression. We support the use of inclusive democratic processes to make decisions. Transformation. We adapt to the changing world. We covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. Openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian and Universalist heritages, never complete and never perfect. Generosity. We cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope. We covenant to freely and compassionately share our faith, presence, and resources. Our generosity connects us to one another in relationships of interdependence and mutuality. Equity. Last but not least, equity. We declare that every person has the right to flourish with inherent dignity and worthiness. We covenant to use our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities. These are what our shared values may look like in the future. There are 3 changes that I believe are important to acknowledge. The first is that in this proposal, there are no numbered 7 principles. This can feel like a big change, and for some of us, it is. Can we hold space for those who are experiencing grief? Can we remember that someone can grieve for what was lost while still being supportive of what we gain by this proposal? May we remember that this space is a relational process, a ritual of many feelings, many conversations, and reflection. The second is that in this proposal, the 8th principle is alive and well. Did you hear it? It's weaved into the proposed value of justice. And I quote, "We covenant to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression. We support the use of inclusive democratic processes to make decisions," end quote. The third change is the inclusion of the word love. This proposal finally lifts up love. The fact that we are just now including love is an example of where this proposal catches up to our lived experience as UUs. Despite us holding up love in such high regard, it was never mentioned in any of our principles. It's time love gets its proper recognition in place as the, and I quote, "enduring force that holds us together." Amen. Amen, that's right. This past June, at General Assembly, delegates voted to give preliminary approval to continue the conversation on the Article 2 proposal. 1,816 delegates, or 86.3% of delegates, voted to preliminary approve Article 2 proposal. They voted to continue the conversation. Only 13.7% voted no. So we're going to continue to talk about this. That is a good thing. This vote also included 6 amendments, which I'll share include adding spiritual development and the creation of new UU communities into our purposes, and wordsmithing around our language on interdependence, justice, democracy, as well as the inclusion of mystery and wonder to our inspirations. We had a lot going on in June, and it is not yet done. All of this is to say that this mandated, spirit-led transformation is one of the most sacred, meaningful rituals our denomination engages in. And it has not been acknowledged with the deep reverence it deserves. So let's change that, starting today. This is where our next steps come in. What do we do now as a congregation? What do we do now as an individual person of liberal, rational belief? So let's explore what our next steps could look like from the lens of spiritual practice, democracy, and rationality. Change is how we have chosen theologically to define our future. This is in deep contrast to some faith traditions which are deliberately static. It's not so much that we hold change itself as sacred, it's that practicing change as a spiritual practice helps us live into applying our theological understanding of the interdependent web in which we exist. Our next steps might look like this. We listen to the joys and sorrows of our community. We repair. This interdependent web is about many things, including relationships. As we become aware of our relational concerns, we take action to make things right. We change for the better. We consider compassionate processes that support not repeating mistakes. We revise what contributed to failures. We remove what causes pain. We clarify our shared meanings and reassess our priorities in today's context with an eye towards growing together in a meaningful way. We embrace change to increase our resilience in upholding covenants in which our relationships can thrive. Yes, we may fall short, and yes, we must keep trying. The relational interdependent web is our reason. Embracing change as a spiritual practice is our how. The Reverend Kathleen Rowlands, author, UU minister for 29 years, and accredited interim minister, who I had the honor of being mentored by during my seminary internship. She says this about our living tradition. Throughout history, we have moved to the rhythms of mystery and wonder, prophecy, wisdom, teachings from ancient and modern sources, and nature herself. End quote. We move. Not only do we move, but we move to many wisdoms, to our many experiences. We move to the ethical rationality in our hearts in which we trust. We move to the scientific inquiry that says the outcome of our study will be better when we work together, take in various inputs, and discern in good faith with good data. Yes, good data. When we call on the spirit of John Lewis's guiding principle, good trouble, this means necessary trouble to enact and inspire meaningful change. I'd like to add, let's get into good trouble with good data. Good data, in our sense, is data that is democratically gathered, the facts and lived experiences of truth tellers, where we name our grief while holding space for grace, holding space for the imperfection of our humanity. Change is often uncomfortable, time-consuming. We know this. In part because no transcendent power will save us from ourselves, we must step up, make it our business to understand the changes that may come to pass. We must step up and make it our spiritual practice to participate. Without our active participation in this process, there can be no good data gathered. This is not a time to sit back and watch. This is a time to dialogue with each other on this Article 2 process. It's not over. Reach out to the denominational affairs representative in your community if they haven't connected with you yet. Ensure you're updated on when and how to participate. This is a time to engage with the Article 2 study resources available on the UUA website. These resources are great sources for group ministries, small group ministries. This is the time to think about how you may encourage your delegates to vote next year. For over a year, UUs all over have offered their voices so that the Article 2 Commission has good data. Good data to work in an inclusive way that captured many, many voices. Will your delegates vote to finalize these changes? Changes which include love and a pledge toward anti-oppression and justice. For the outcome to have the best result, all need to be a part of this process for us to get there. Let me illustrate this by saying that It's impossible to deepen without change. This is why we regularly reevaluate our principles, purposes, and sources. Are they doing the job we need them to do? Do they reflect who we wish to be? Even if these proposed changes are adopted, it does not mean congregations who've adopted the eighth principle can say the work is done. We know that to agree on something does not mean we automatically start living into it. This living into our values takes work. It takes our committees. It takes our love and persistence. Jewish writer Arvam Davis observed, "We are what we practice." So let's practice change. Let's practice acknowledging this every 15-year ritual with reverence and honor. Let's practice, as my favorite philosopher, Bruce Lee, says, be like water. Unitarian Universalism is a fluid faith. Bruce Lee reminds us, and I quote, "Be like water, making itself through cracks. Water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend." Some religions perceive being fluid and open to change as an invitation to crash, as an invitation to lose power. We are so beautifully different. We choose our way forward. We create our future. We choose to flow and be fluid. We choose to perceive open-mindedness as a virtue. It is unethical to remain unchanged when good data comes, when our circumstances change. When a family grows and a baby needs a seat at the table, we use our resources to get a seat that's comfortable and safe. If an adult now uses a wheelchair, in order to include them at the table, we must first remove the old chair to make space for them. When someone in our beloved community says, our current principles don't do enough to keep them from harm, we must not only listen, but change. Change is a critical part of our spiritual deepening and transformation as a faith community. We know not changing is easier. There is safety for some in the status quo. For others, the status quo is not so safe. It's harmful, oppressive. However, we are people that journey together, not on the easiest path, but on the path that calls to our best selves. Jesus could have taken the easy path, but he resisted. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. could have taken the easy path, but he had a dream. 6-year-old Ruby Bridges could have stayed at a school for Black children, but she integrated. Sophia Lyons Falls, Unitarian, theologian, educator, and author, broke norms with her innovative contributions to our faith because she knew what worked in the past would not serve us into the future. This is the path of love. When our principles transform, so do we. May we be true to those. May we be true to who we say we are. When the status quo no longer serves us, may we choose to evolve, to lean into change as a spiritual practice, a fluid faith like water. We choose to change. We choose to love. Amen. We will not rise in body and spirit for the closing hymn. We will instead extinguish the flame. Becky?
Please join with me and say these words together as we extinguish our flame. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And now we'll have the postlude. Excuse me, after the benediction.
And here's our benediction. It's called Love Fiercely by me. Love Fiercely. The work of our faith is love. We are called to bless the world with our resilience and generosity. Let us rejoice in the promise of our best selves. May we be courageous and love fiercely. Amen. Now, please be seated, remain seated for the postlude.